All right, and so good morning, everyone. Welcome to our April 22nd new Grantee Staff Transition Committee meeting today. I'll be presenting this morning on one of my all-time favorite topics, which is theme planning. And today we'll kind of also be focusing a little bit on summer because, you know, it's a good thing to do this time of year. Although I'm sure many of you have already had lots of summer plans underway for quite some time at this point. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I am recording the meeting today. This will be posted on the website after I get it downloaded and uploaded. And if anybody needs anything at any time, you can always reach out to me. I'll follow up after the meeting with the link as to where you can find the recording and any of the supporting documents that I share today. The other thing I would just ask is if you keep yourself muted to limit some of that background noise, but by all means, if you have questions, stop me along the way, or you can put those into the chat. That's a great way to communicate as well. And the last thing that I would say is I'm going to be using my screen in this fashion where I kind of have my guide over here versus the full presentation mode, primarily because I'm an old lady and it's just easier for me to see that way. So if it's bothersome to you, just maybe please bear with me. But if it is very cumbersome, let me know and I'll make all attempts to be able to adjust that screen. So with that being said, we're going to start off with just a little bit of an icebreaker today. So if you can, grab a piece of scratch paper or, you know, maybe a Post-it note or something of that nature, anything that you have around, and a writing tool. And once you have those in place, maybe give me a thumbs up using the option in Zoom to do that. You can do that. All right, I see a couple of thumbs, or maybe just even give me a thumbs up on camera. Awesome. Okay.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you today?
What can I do for you?
Oh, Chris, I'm going to mute you because I don't think you're talking to us. So, all right. Okay, so for our icebreaker today, just to get us off on a good start and get our brains a-going. Well, maybe. Come on, here we go. All right, we're going to do a 3-minute activity. I would like you to see how many words you can make in 3 minutes using the words summer programming rocks. And your time starts now. There. All right, we're back at it. So what I'd like everybody to do first and foremost is count up how many words did you get, and you can either unmute and tell us or drop that into the chat. All right, 20, 16, 21, 32. Ooh, 32 from Savannah Stuckmeyer. So 22, 10, 17. All right. So what was your best word? Like, what was your money word when you did this? Who wants to unmute and tell me your money word? Does anybody have a really good one? Drop it into the chat if you don't want to unmute or if you can't unmute. Crocs. Socks. Anybody else got a word that you found in there? All right, that's okay. If you have it, go ahead and drop her in there. Coming. Ooh, good word, Carissa. So, all right. Well, hopefully that just kind of woke up our brains a little bit today because I'm going to ask you to try to think as creatively as possible this morning. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about what theme planning is. So theme planning is when you have an activity in your mind, or you're looking for an activity to do with the young people that you're working with, and you want to make a conscious attempt to connect as many academic, social emotional learning, field trip supports, things of that nature into this particular activity or topic. So the pros of theme planning is you can do almost anything when you're doing theme planning. Like, you can make a justification for almost anything when you're doing this. This is also a really fantastic way to incorporate youth voice into what you're doing at your site. Maybe you even start with a quick survey of your youth of which of the following themes are interesting to you or make you wonder, what's that all about? And then ask them to help you to develop some activities around that theme. Another great pro that comes with this is that you can allow new or younger staff an opportunity to practice their skills. So I know some of you have talked in the past about how your staff is maybe a little green, like maybe they're a college youth who's never really had an experience in this field before. This can be a really good way to kind of give them the support and confidence they need to be able to implement some type of a program. Now, with every pro, there's got to be a con. And for theme planning, the general cons are, it's going to take some time to be able to do a really comprehensive planning model for this. It'll take that time, and there's going to be a fair amount of front loading that happens here. You're going to have those things in place, have your curricula well-defined, have your activity outline well-defined, do your planning if you're thinking about field trips. And of course, we're talking about, following safety protocol and things like that for COVID as well. I think that kind of goes without saying, but it will take a little bit of time to be able to do that. Another con is you really have to consider flexibility and backup plans. If you have a whole theme planned and 80% of your activities are contingent upon being outside and it decides to rain for a week or whatever, you're going to have to come up with something a little bit different or have that flexibility to be able to move that indoors to an environment that you need. The other thing that I would say about theme planning that I personally would put as a pro is I do also think that this is also a really nice way to build kind of a sense of team and a sense of camaraderie. What other pros or cons can you think of as you listen to some of these things today? What are some obstacles or barriers or positives that could potentially come from theme planning? And again, feel free to unmute or drop your ideas into the chat. Anyone? Okay, well, I'm going to grab a document from my desktop here and pop it into the chat. So give me 1 second to do that. There, everybody should be able to see a PDF that I just popped in there. If you can grab that, that would be great. Oh, yes. Okay, so Danny says consistent staffing. And again, that could be a pro or a con when it comes to theme planning. If you have new staff, it's a great way to allow them to practice those skills. On the other hand, if you have a staff that was really vital to the plan that you have come up with, I could see that might be something that could be a con as well. And then, of course, just all of the things that come with new staff, right? You have to onboard them, you have to get them comfortable in the role, and so on and so forth. So, all right, if everybody can grab that worksheet, maybe do that. And again, I'll send this out afterwards as well. But I found this nifty little document to be able to help you think about how you do your theme planning. And again, right now, this is in a PDF form. But you could print this, you could use it to take notes, or you could do a transfer to make it into a Word document so that you could address these items easier. But you can see right in the middle of the document here is you have the theme. And this one is preloaded with an example of a read aloud. So then what you'll want to think about, and these are some predefined categories, but you could always add additional boxes to this web as well. So when you're thinking about your theme or your read aloud in this particular situation, how might you incorporate math, social studies, art, a field trip possibility, centers or apps, games, science, and writing? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through a way that I have personally used theme planning in the past, and then I'm going to ask you for some input or thoughts as to maybe some of your experiences, if you've used theme planning or if you have thoughts about anything that I'll be sharing today. So for those of you who know this, I'm sorry if it's a little repetitive, and if you don't, I guess this will be your first time then. So I actually work part-time at my local community library. So that's where you'll find me every Saturday morning down there at the Victor Public Library doing that work. And then because I am who I am, I also have been placed in charge of children and family programming, with the exception of the summer reading program, because obviously I have a full-time job as well. I do this work because basically for two reasons. Number one, I love reading. I see the value of reading, and I see the impact it can really make in youth lives. And second, quite honestly, it's fun. It's just a lot of fun. And it's a nice way for me to do what I love in a very creative way. So back before COVID, when we were able to do community youth programming, I actually did a themed lesson plan for a particular group of students. So this is an example that I did with kindergarten, first grade youth. So think about, how you might adapt this for your older youth, and so on and so forth. Because I also had activities for grades 2, 3, and 4, 5 for this particular lesson. So for this session, our theme was birds. And right away out of the gate, because again, we're a library, we promote literacy at every step of the way. We did do a read aloud. We used the book Hooray for Birds by Lucy Cousins. So I had the youth gathered with me. We started off with this story. For this particular series, we incorporated theme planning that include elements of writing, math, social studies, art, field trips, center apps, games, and science. So throughout this session that I had with the youth, and this was a summer session, so I did have a little bit longer period of time. You could certainly break this up over, a week or multiple days, or however it works best in your programming. But for the writing connection that we did around our theme of birds, we did a combination of both large paper writing and verbal storytelling, where we pulled out bird-related words out of a container. So I had this container pre-made. The youth drew out that slip of paper. It had a word and a picture on it, because again, this was for kindergarten, first grade. And they had to develop a line of the story to be able to address that particular slip that they brought out. So an example of that was I had a picture of a feather. So it was a picture of a feather and then a word of a feather. And then in our general storytelling that was being recorded on this large sheet of post-it paper, the youth that pulled the picture of the feather out had to add a line to the story connected to that feather. We then went on to math. So I had developed just a very quick tally sheet for them and gave them all their own little mini clipboards, so they thought they were just totally awesome little citizen scientists, right? They headed outside and we did a quick tally of the number of birds that we saw in the park that's actually adjacent to the library. And if they could identify the type of birds, we did that as well. So again, just a very early math skill that we were able to build upon there. For social studies, we actually highlighted one of the birds, which is the goldfinch, the state bird of Iowa. I have several finch feeders at my house, and I had several pictures that we showed the youth, so I was able to demonstrate them. We talked about the bird's beak and feathers and coloring and the difference between the boy birds and the girl birds, which also kind of led down here to our science connection. So again, we used our math activity of tallying, and then again, we used the pictures to be able to talk about feathers, coloring, beaks, diets, things of that nature. We had an art component in which they were able to use sidewalk chalk to decorate the sidewalk and parking lot area of the library with their favorite type of bird. And they could use a real life bird, or they could get totally crazy. And, like I had Kevin from Up, he was drawn on the sidewalk, or she, I guess, was drawn on the sidewalk. So that was kind of fun. Regarding field trips, we didn't go on a field trip, but the following week, we did have a guest speaker from the Iowa Raptor Rehabilitation Center, and she brought on an actual real-life hawk with her. So that was so cool because many of the youth attended my program the first week, and then they came back and attended her program the second week, and we were able to make those connections and parallels. So the kids were like, yeah, we learned that, or we didn't see any hawks when we were doing our tallies, and so on and so forth. I did not have a center or an app connected specifically to this, but I did find that there was a YouTube clip of the book being read, so that might be a way that you incorporate that feature. And then for our game that day, we played a version. This goes by so many different names, but the kids, it's essentially a game of tag. So sometimes it's called sharks and minnows, if that helps anybody. We called this swallows and mosquitoes because we did a little introduction to barn swallows. And again, because I live in the country, I was able to provide them pictures of what barn swallows look like. And I also had a video to record what their singing or voice or tweet sounded like, I guess. And we talked about how much they love eating mosquitoes, which is why they're my favorite bird at my house, because we all hate mosquitoes, right? And then we played that game. So again, that was a way that we incorporated some of this. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to invite anybody who's interested to unmute yourself and maybe talk about, have you done theme planning before? And maybe give us some details of those components that you use to be able to do so. Kind of a quiet group today.
We did theme planning during Black History Month, where our boss had said he wanted us to incorporate someone, try to do it every 2 weeks or someone every other day or something. So I have a diverse group. So we did music. We did some African-American people who were soccer players. We also did the vice president. So I kind of went to the field of the kids, what they like to do. They like sports. So we did sports person. We did music, so the kids like music. We also did dance, someone that danced, and then we talked about the post office, those that like to write letters to people or their friends. So we did the famous African-American first woman postal person. So that's how we did everything. And then we had a book, so I had to read aloud. Then we had an art activity. And then we also did like a game or something to incorporate with the theme.
That's awesome. Yeah. And did it go over well for you? Yeah, I see you shaking your head.
Yes, it did.
Great. Anyone else? Does anyone else want to share?
I have done rainforest before, but I didn't have all of the components that you listed. We gradually made our way to create our room as a rainforest. So we built that, and we gradually then added in animals. And as we did that, we would read books about them. And then our final project was to write a research paper and then present that. So then with that, they would illustrate, and then write their research paper. So there was a song though. We did have a song at one point, but it was fun.
Yeah. And Danny, you bring up a really good point. You don't necessarily have to hit every single one of those circles to have it be considered theme planning. Again, you just need to consider that the essence of theme planning is to try to make as many possible connections as you can. Sometimes because of time or space or staffing or whatever, you might only be able to hit 2 or 3 of them, and that's fine too. It's just kind of a creative way to do some of that planning. Would anybody else like to share?
I kind of did it where it was the theme of the week, but then like every Thursday was a STEM day. Every Monday was, like a math day. So I kind of kept it. So they always knew that day was that general topic of like STEM or math, but it was always the theme of the week. So that's how I tried to do it one time.
Yeah, that's awesome too. And I think that's fairly common, just from what I've heard from the field, and that's a good way to implement a theme plan as well. So yeah. Okay, anybody else want to share this morning? Okay, so if you're looking for a place to add some resources to your theme planning, I've listed 3 different options here for you. And of course, there's many, many others, but these are just 3 that we wanted to highlight this morning. So if you haven't done this, I would really strongly suggest doing this is on your phone, your tablet, whatever makes sense for you in your work role, download Mizzen by Mott, that app. You guys, this is such a fantastic app for your device because it really gives you as many different resources as possible to be able to do a lesson plan or an activity, and it's right there at your fingertips. So they have done a fantastic job of building out that app. The next place I would encourage you to look is the Active Learning Community Partnership website. This is the Iowa After School Alliance and our partnership with Blank Park Zoo, the Science Center of Iowa, and the Iowa Children's Museum. So if you're looking specifically for STEM-based topics, you can find them on this website here, the stemforiowa.org. And if you go to the lesson plan repository stage, you'll see that we have these things outlined there for you. Please note that this particular website is in process. So there's absolutely materials on there. Keep checking back because we'll be adding more and more materials throughout these next several months. So Danny says she just used that website yesterday. So that's good. That's good to know. So, and then, gosh, I'm so sorry. I keep hitting it moves on my mouse here. And the last resource that I would provide to you is the Iowa After School Alliance developed an After School in a Box toolkit that can be found at the link provided. And there is specifically a section on effective program components that it includes things like Mizzen by Mott, but it also includes things that you might want to consider thinking about, social emotional learning or bullying prevention or things of that nature too. I'll share the slides out after the presentation as well, so you'll be able to access those links. Okay, so the next level of theme planning is how we can bring in the family, right? So mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, whoever else supports your youth, whoever they live with, whoever is involved in their daily lives. So it absolutely can benefit you and the youth you're working with if you can incorporate family engagement into your summer programming, because we know that number one, it's a best practice. You get better youth outcomes, and then it's just darn fun, So again, if your theme can connect to family in any way, shape, or form, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a take home that they can do with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever it is that they live with. Maybe it's a book share or something of that, along those lines. That can be a really great way to involve that family engagement component. And again, as that friendly reminder, we ask that when it's safe, of course, that you have 4 family engagement events in a year's time. So roughly 1 per quarter for your grant. Theme planning can be a really slick way of being able to do that. Also, a couple more resources for you. I don't know if anybody knows this, but we actually have a guide to family engagement. So if you go to the Iowa21cclc.com website on our grant info page, and it's towards the bottom, we have the family engagement guide. But again, after the presentation, I'll share the slides, so you'll be able to direct link by clicking on that highlighted hyperlink there. Okay, when we're thinking about theme planning and family engagement, there's essentially 4 components that you'll want to cover: greeting, sharing, doing, and taking. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to go through these. The first is greeting. So when you bring your family in, whether it's in person or virtual, your greeting can really set the tone for how you want your event to go as it's connected to your theme. It allows you to build that rapport. Some of you know your families really well. Others maybe not so much, especially as you're thinking about planning for next fall. You're going to have maybe some new families in your program, or maybe you have new youth who have moved in or out of your school district. Or, we've even had situations in the past where, maybe mom, dad, grandma, whoever has worked second shift and has been unable to attend, but maybe now they work first shift and they can. So you're just meeting this person for the first time. So learning those names, learning the general situation. And by that, I don't mean you need to have a formal intake to find out the family's strengths and weaknesses or anything like that, but you can learn a lot just in a very short conversation with the families that you're working with. This also gives the youth in your program a way to model hospitality. How do you greet a person? How do you do a handshake, again, when things are safe? Involve the youth in allowing them to introduce their parent or caregiver to you. You can kind of build in some of those soft skills or social skills as well. So when I think back to my particular activity that I did with the birds. Full disclosure, we did not have a family engagement element to that process because it was designed and promoted as a youth program, not a family program. But if I were to go back and do a family engagement component, immediately, 3 things that I think I would do immediately to fully engage that family is I'd come up with some name tags that maybe had birds on them. Again, thinking about just the visual of the theme. Another way that you can give youth some voice is to have them take mom and dad over to a survey wall. Mom, dad, take this sticker, vote for your favorite bird, and then we can certainly take a look and see, what the winner is and so on and so forth. And then, of course, bird themed snacks, food or drink. Maybe we make a trail mix or, something of that nature that has some nuts or seeds, pending allergies, of course. That allows the youth to think about, hey, cardinals eat sunflower seeds or, something of that nature. When I think about the sharing component, this is where your focus is really going to be on that youth voice. So this includes things like centers or circles. It can be done in small groups or large groups, and it gives the youth an opportunity to be able to show off to their parents and demonstrate what it is they're learning. So again, had I incorporated a family engagement component to my bird lessons, 3 things that immediately popped into my head was showing them the story and how we built the story using the draw out slips of paper, so maybe even reading the story out loud as a family might be a good sharing activity. Showing the parents the birds they drew on the sidewalk, this was mine and this is what my best friend drew, or, Mrs. Hall said that we could do real birds or pretend birds. So here's the goldfinch I drew, but then here's Kevin from Up. And then showing the parents their observation charts and explaining how they did that. You know, when they went out to the park, what kinds of birds did they see? How many birds did they see? Did that surprise them, or were they kind of disappointed there wasn't very many birds because I had a large group of kids out there that scared them all away? You know, so doing some of that sharing. The doing component, and this is where the fun comes in, right? Because now what we're talking about is this is that connection between out of school time and their family. So this is a game. It's reading, it's singing, it's playing together. It's the doing of an activity together. Again, my bird example, I was at a library. It would have been so very easy to incorporate some reading time with an assortment of books. So I could see that, you know, maybe I would pile them up. We have some bean bags at our local library. I could have maybe made like nest situations and had the parents and children together for a read aloud or something of that nature. We also, another thing that popped into my mind is, you know, incorporate a level of STEM here, you know, provide some straws, Q-tips, you know, whatever on the table and ask the families to build their own nest. And talk about, you know, have the youth even talk about, you know, we talked about nests, or we talked about how birds will use, you know, sticks and twigs, but sometimes you see like the shiny gum wrapper that makes it into their nest. And maybe you even incorporate a discussion about being socially responsible at that point too. And then last is the taking. So these are the takeaways, resources, and materials, but this is also where your reflection comes in. So the ultimate question is, what do you want the families to leave with? And it could be tangible items, but it could also be thoughts moving forward. So just a couple of quick examples that could incorporate with my bird theme here. Seed packets for flowers that are particularly attractive to birds. You know, that might be something that would be a fairly inexpensive thing that I could have sent out the door with them. Also, in the past, we've received these little like pocket guides from the DNR or the Audubon Society. I can't remember which now off the top of my head. It's just kind of like a Birds of Iowa type of thing. Could you incorporate something like that? Or does your community have perhaps like a map of the walking trails around wherever it is you live? Again, I live very rural. Our walking trails are like dirt or gravel roads, right? So we don't have that necessarily, but other places do. Pardon me. And then again, for reflection, you might want to consider a survey. That's absolutely appropriate. Or again, a group vote on their favorite thing. So a very quick thing that you can do as a way of reflecting is, again, those sticker votes or even body votes. Go to this corner if this was your favorite thing, go to that corner if that was your favorite thing, or place your sticker to mark the thing that you liked best. Okay. So I know that the last few slides were kind of quick. I do want to pause to see if anybody has any questions, or again, if you've done a different type of reflection, or if you have an idea of something that you would do that kind of hits those greeting, sharing, doing, or taking that worked well for you. So I'm just going to open the floor and see what people think now. All right, got something in the chat. Oh, you're very welcome. So, all right.
I was just thinking, sorry. I was just thinking, like, my brain's trying to, like, towards the end of the year, how could I implement this working or moving forward? And I was just thinking that maybe, you know, as we get nicer weather, we could do some sort of activity outside as well, which might help with, you know, our regulations with COVID. So my mind's just kind of spinning a little bit. Maybe if we could do some outdoor activity that would help with spacing and, like I said, COVID regulations. So just a thought.
Yeah, and again, being outdoors can be a great way to kind of mitigate those requirements, right? But we also know too that just being outdoors in general is great for kids. So if you can incorporate that outdoor involvement, again, my activity kind of started in the community room that we have at the library. But again, we were outside counting birds. We were outside drawing pictures on the sidewalks. We were back inside to, do a couple of other activities and whatnot. And then right back outside to play swallows and mosquitoes. So anybody else, thoughts? And or have you had some success with doing a family engagement component to a theme type of event? Looks like we got something in the chat. Oh, yes, Danny, that's a good point. Getting your families outside with you as well can be a great way to incorporate a family engagement component. So, all right. Well, I'm going to stop share, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up the call today with a couple of different things. So again, I'll send the materials out with the template and the slides, so you'll be able to access all of the links. If you have examples of theme planning that you've done that have been pretty successful, I'm always looking to hear about those. It's a good way for us to be able to highlight and support and make connections to other sites across the state. And then selfishly, I'll maybe even use some of your ideas when I'm doing my work at the library too. So if there's one thing to be said about educators and out of school time professionals is we try to not recreate the wheel if we can avoid it, right? The other thing that I would say is, as we're moving towards wrapping up our new grantee staff transition meetings for the year, our next meeting in May, which I believe, let me grab a calendar just very quickly here. It'll be May 27th, and this one will be just an open forum. So for this particular meeting, we're looking for people to share successes and barriers. If you have ideas for topics for this committee moving forward, some of you will be participating again next year as a part of this committee. Some of you will be rotated off. And then if you feel like you have gained some knowledge or expertise from this and would like to remain, we can talk about that then too. So that'll be our topic for next month, is just, again, an open discussion. I will have some facilitation questions prepared for that, just so that we don't have kind of the awkward silences and whatnot. But think about, again, what went well for you, what didn't. If you tried any of the tips or tools or techniques from these calls this year and had some success, I'd love to hear that. I'd also like to hear what those obstacles were for you, so that I can maybe do some tweaking for the next group coming in. So questions before we sign off for the day?
I was just gonna say, we're trying to get our summer program together. So the tools and things that you were talking about, the theme, I think we're gonna use those. That's gonna help. It's gonna help a lot.
Yeah. I hope you find it useful. So, all right. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed today's session. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I hope you gained a little bit of idea to implement summer or school year. And with that being said, I'm going to stop recording.